Hey, everybody. Welcome to tonight's late night happy hour, a late night happy hour Land O Lakers live crossover episode, Andy, starring exactly the same people who star in crossover episodes on TV.
Yeah, it's like the most anticlimactic of the old Law and Order homicide, those type of crossover episodes where everyone would be really excited because you had Jerry Auerbach and then like Andre Brower showing up or whatever.
It's Ice-T. It's Richard Belzer.
Exactly.
No, none of that here.
This is less complicated.
It's just us, and it's us switching back and forth basically between this and this. So for branding purposes, it's a slightly different show, but we also do want to remind people that when it is Land O Lakers and Land O Lakers Live, it is of course brought to you by the nice folks at Delicious Pizza. 20% off when you mention Cam Brothers when you order it online, or when you call it in two locations, West Adams and on Sunset in Hollywood. So go get yourself some pizza because, God damn, Andy, man, the Lakers just stomped up on Miami in Game 1. So
it's a great way to celebrate.
Hungry.
Yep, great way to celebrate. You are supporting a local business and supporting the local business of a massive Laker fan. Also, you are celebrating that Brian and I managed to work out the red tape and the deal making to create this crossover episode on such short notice.
It was really impressive how we got this done.
Yes.
All right. So this was, I want to say, was it a walk the whole game? At the beginning of it, there was probably a little bit of concern. The Lakers fell behind big early, down 13, very quickly in the first quarter, down 13. The whole, a lot of questions as to whether or not the whole start Dwight Howard thing was a particularly good idea. Miami came out very aggressively putting Dwight in pick and rolls, and the Lakers seemed very slow on their rotations. And all. Then they got the hang of it. Dwight came out of the game. They got the hang of it. And from there, the Lakers, I believe I heard Dave McMenamin say, went on a 70-35 run.
Yes. Or 75-30.
Either
75 to 30.
Either one is good.
75. Well, but 75-30 is better than 70-35.
I'm no mathematician, Andy, but I do know that is better.
Yes, it is better. I just, in my head, did the math because I'm like, wait a minute, actually, is it better? I was correct. It is better. 75-30 is a 45-point swing. 70-35 is a 35 point. So yes, McMenamin's version of this, and I wrote it down, and I hope I didn't do it wrong, is better.
Whatever. The bottom line is, by the way, when everybody saw me kind of duck off the screen real quickly there, that was me recognizing that this is sort of live quasi television. And I had to scratch my nose, and somebody out there is going to do like the screen grab with my finger in my nose, and I don't want to be that. So not on this joyous day. So the Lakers' final score was 116-98. It was not that close. The Lakers, as I believe our friend Darius Soriano from Foreign Blue and Gold put it, didn't just let their foot off the gas. They got out of the car completely. They just started walking. But it doesn't matter. Like Miami went on some sort of 17-2 run or whatever and brought it to 19. The Lakers thoroughly dominated this game. So the question becomes, though, where do we start? Do you start here with, wow, they really dominated, or do you start with what happened to the Heat? Because the worst thing that happened to Miami night was not the final score, it was the injury. So which do you think leads the show tonight, Andy?
Let's start with the Lakers themselves, just in terms of what we liked from it. It's a difficult game to really try to analyze and really break down in terms of X's and O's, just because the extremes of it, with Goran Dragic not playing the entire second half, Bam Adebayo missing a lot of the second half, and presumably Dragic also was the foot issue that he had, and it turns out, according to multiple reporters, that he has a
plantar fascia tear.
Yeah, plantar fascia tear. He's going to be reevaluated. Apparently has not ruled out, according to Woj, returning to play in the finals.
Right. I saw like Joe Johnson played through a plantar fascia tear in one finals. I forget when it was. I saw somebody post that. The thing about it is, though, he played like shit. So he was ass, which is understandable because he had a torn foot.
Yeah. So, but depending on, what percentage of Goran Dragic you have, 60% of Goran Dragic is presumably a lot better than the alternative and what comes behind him. I mean, Kendrick Nunn ended up playing a lot in the second half, playing very well. And he's somebody that went from, being in rookie of the year consideration and playing a big role for Miami in the first half to basically not playing at all in the postseason. And it was funny, you and I were joking before the show began that, to some degree, when Kendrick Nunn gets on the court and gets off to this hot start, there's an element of the Lakers being like, wait, who the hell is that? Like, oh, Kendrick Nunn, like, wait, what does he do again? Like, it probably took 5 or 6 possessions where it's like, oh shit, he's left-handed. Like, I totally forgot about that. Because I mean, the guy has not played at all. But as soon as you actually start prepping and scouting for Kendrick Nunn, and I would presume without any judgment at all that the Lakers did very little preparing for Nunn in this game, because why the hell would
they scout, they do the stuff, but he haven't played. So it's not like you can sit there and look at the film of all the stuff he did in the last.
Exactly.
He hasn't played.
He's on the scouting report. Myers Leonard is on the scouting report. Yeah, I guarantee Frank Vogel hasn't spent 30 minutes in film sessions talking about what to do with Myers Leonard because the dude hasn't played this entire bubble.
Correct.
So, and the reason I bring that up is just sometimes those surprise factors, you'll see that in the playoffs, a guy that really has not played at all having a really hot quarter just because nobody is quite sure what it looks like with them on the court. And LeBron actually even said after the game that, it's very similar to talking about how after the game 1 loss against Houston, seeing that speed up close that Houston has takes some adjusting to. LeBron actually said how hard Miami plays was something that they had to get used to a little bit as well. And you sort of ease your way into that in terms of adjustments. But I think it's safe to say the Lakers adjusted and then some.
They figured it out. Look, I mean, they got I think the Lakers probably would have won, could have, would have, whatever, won this game anyway. And the injuries come in 2 categories. It's what does it mean for this game? And obviously, Miami playing without Dragic for all but 15 minutes is going to be a problem for them. Like the Dragic, we talk about Bam, we talk about Jimmy Butler. Dragic has been spectacular inside this bubble, and he, when the 3 games that they've lost, Miami, in the postseason to this point, Dragic was terrible. Like he shot 14% from 3. His scoring average went from like 22 or 23 a game to 17, I believe, in the 3 losses. And so only 15 minutes from him tonight. He was the only guy until Kendrick Nunn at the end who was a plus in the plus minus. He was a +1 in 15 minutes. Bam played 21 minutes, so they got the first half out of him. The Lakers very well could have won this game anyway, and that's because AD was awesome, 34 points. Looking at it, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. The 3 blocks, 10 for 10 from the free throw line, and LeBron was great. With a almost triple double, 25, 13, and 9. So I think the Lakers played a good game tonight. And maybe a very good game. They're never going to lose when they shoot 11 of 17 and a half from 3-point range. And that's what they did. You have to separate that from what comes next. They didn't win this game because of the injuries, but they probably win the rest of the series if these guys are this banged up.
Yeah. To this point, scouring around Twitter and trying to see what reporters in the bubble are saying, there doesn't seem to be any word on Bam Adebayo and what exactly is going on with that shoulder injury, and I guess sort of the feared severity of it. What that is
bad.
It looked
really, like a guy who was holding his arm, like that arm, because I've done my AC joint, and like you get that thing where you kind of lean over where you don't want to lift up your shoulder because it hurts too much.
Well, the other thing
I'm just saying it hurts.
The other thing too, man, like we don't know exactly if it happened from, getting tangled up with LeBron or that shot that he took from Dwight. And it wasn't a dirty shot, but, it was definitely a strong impact when he was going towards the basket and Dwight was, trying to stay with him. A shot like that from Dwight with that physicality.
And on a injury that was already there. I mean, this is a recurrence of an injury that he had. So, oh gosh, I mean, let's talk a little bit more about AD before we get into the rest of the series, just because he has been. And LeBron was asked after the game, you know, what did you say? Did you give AD some advice? All this stuff, and LeBron was like, I didn't tell him anything. Like he got himself ready. Like he's been preparing for this. Like he was very. I love that answer from LeBron, making it very clear. Like I'm not, you know, Yoda-ing this guy along. He is a spectacular and elite player who is doing this, you know, out of his own talent and drive and preparation. And, you know, first finals game, 11 of 21, 10 of 10 from the line, 34 points. This run that he's on continues, and it continues to be a great story, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we talked about this before, Brian. Like, AD has not been tested at this level before. You know, before this season, he had never been to the Western Conference Finals, much less the NBA Finals. He's never been in this type of situation with this type of spotlight and the type of pressure that comes with playing for the Lakers with LeBron James. You know, and then unfortunately, the tragic element of Kobe Bryant's death, and you know that pressure, and it seems so far even like a good type of pressure, but the motivation that comes with really wanting to win this championship for Kobe and to really honor him in the way that everybody top down with the organization wants to do. But Anthony Davis's playoff sample size, small and I guess in the grand scheme of things insignificant as it may have been, has been really strong. When he was in New Orleans. Like if you looked at his numbers, if you actually watched that series where they took out Portland, he was really, really good. Like Anthony Davis has not been the problem in terms of the Pelicans having never made deep sustained runs. You know, he may not have been able to carry certain rosters past a certain point. And sometimes the issue was Anthony Davis himself was hurt. But he's not somebody like a Paul George where you question his playoff record and you question whether or not he's somebody that actually is, I hate throwing on cliches like this, like, you know, built for the, you know, built for the postseason.
Right. I mean, no, you're right. It's average. He came into, I mean, as a career he was averaging like 30 points a game in the playoffs, but it like you say, it's just the context. And look, I mean, it tends to get boiled down to did you win or did you lose? But there are guys who don't do as well in the playoffs or can't quite sustain it, or are just, you know, sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. They don't necessarily distinguish themselves regularly, you know, every single time. Like, you know, generally speaking, say 2011, LeBron has. AD kind of has been that guy, just not when it mattered. And, you know, it matters now, and he's killing it.
Here's an interesting question from the Roberto Jones, or a comment. AD has been the best player in the world the entire playoffs. Do you think Anthony Davis has been the best Laker? Like, it's you know what I mean? Like, some of this is just how you define it.
God, you know, that's interesting. I mean, you're right. I mean, because and neither one of us are proponents of if you take blank off, like that's not how this works. I think he has been the best player on the team. I don't think he's the most important. Does that make sense? Is that too fine a distinction?
No, actually,
I don't think this works without LeBron, because like LeBron is the engine that drives all this stuff, but it doesn't. But Anthony Davis has been the standout performer.
That is exactly 100% how I would put it too. Because I think if you look at game in, game out, overall impact, and it's weird to say this about LeBron James, who, you know, beyond being among the greatest players to ever pick up a basketball, is among the most versatile players to ever pick up a basketball. Like the type of defensive versatility that we've seen from Anthony Davis, as locked in as LeBron has been in defensively. Like there are certain things he can't replicate because he's 7 inch or he's 4 or 5 inches shorter than Anthony Davis. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things that he simply doesn't do by virtue of just being built differently. And, the efficiency that we've seen from Anthony Davis, he's been leading this team in scoring in the playoffs. I agree with you. LeBron ultimately drives this car, and nobody is going to drive it better. And part of that driving is the leadership, like he's the one that actually decides we don't need to put in the map in Waze. Like I know where we're going. Like I don't need Siri to tell us where we're going. I got this. Like we're not going to go to Google Maps, but that car matters. And Anthony Davis, I think ultimately has been the car. And I guess it's really a question of, what's more important, the driver or the car in a metaphorical race?
Obviously you need both. By the way, check out my All-Star swag from 2018 Cup tonight.
I have that cup.
Game. Yeah, look at that.
I have that cup. And I remember the first time I saw my daughter, she was probably like 3 or so, drinking out of that thing, and the front of it reads Jack Daniels.
The front of 3 in 2018.
Okay, then maybe it was a different cup. However, is that the one with Jack Daniels on it?
Yeah, maybe you're just misremembering how old she. But I didn't mean to derail that. Look, the point is, she's a little girl drinking out of a Jack Daniels cup.
Okay, maybe she felt little to me just because, again,
she's always you're going to be your little girl.
Well, but she especially feels little when she's like, I guess 7, drinking out of a Jack Daniels cup.
We'll get to some questions. I left it in there. That's a good one. Do you think Darren Collison regrets not signing with the Lakers? I think he does now. But yeah, leave us your questions on the chat board. We'll get to them over the course. Yeah, that's disconcerting, but it's a metal cup.
Yeah. It's a great cup.
Drink out of metal, put icy beverages in metal cups, and they stay cold forever.
I think that's actually, by the way, and my days bartending were well before this particular trend, but I think the metal cup probably explains the Moscow Mule trend more than anything else. I think people love the cup because it's always served in a metal.
Technically, if you do it right, it's out of copper, right? A Moscow Mule, you're doing it like one of those copper mugs.
I mean, like I said, my bartending days were before that particular trend, but I do think the cup is a big, big part of it. Like, presentation matters. Like I remember when I did bartend, the Alizé was like one of the hot liquors, and that a lot of that was just blue liquor. People thought this like greenish blue liquor looked really cool. Like, I think Ciroc, a big reason Ciroc vodka took off is that bottle was really good looking. Like a lot of this is just presentation.
What were we talking about before I got into this whole I have a metal cup thing?
We were talking about Anthony Davis in the playoffs.
Right. And just how and the difference between LeBron and AD and who has been the best player. I think we saw though tonight, like when the Lakers hit their 3-pointers and Harrison Fagan at Silver Screen and Roll had a great stat coming into the finals. The Lakers are 12-0 or 15-0. I forget what it is. When they shoot better than 30% from 3. Like, that's not even that good, 30% from 3. But if they get above 30% from 3, they've won every game they've played in the postseason. They were 11 of 17 at halftime from 3-point range. They are not going to lose. They regressed near the end of the game, but I don't think any of this matters. I don't think anything that happened in the fourth quarter matters at all. They're not going to lose if they hit threes like that. And we saw the supporting cast. You don't know who it's going to be night to night. KCP has been quietly very consistent. Hit a couple big threes early in the game from the corner on. I'm not sure it was consecutive possessions, but close to it. That helped get them back in the game and on a roll. But I've reached the point now where I am confident that it is going to be someone. It'll be KCP. It'll be Caruso hit a couple big shots early. Morris hit a couple. Whoever it's going to be, someone will play well enough for the Lakers to win games within a series. I don't worry about the supporting cast in nearly the same way as I did coming into the playoffs. So now you have elevated LeBron, really elevated AD, and a good enough group of guys around them And that's why this whole thing is working as well as it is.
I was going to say it's really significant hearing you say this, because this is something that you had worried about a lot over the course of the season, a lot heading into the bubble. I mean, you and I actually,
not without cause.
I didn't say it was without cause, but I'm just saying it's something that really you saw as a pretty major potential Achilles heel for this team.
I think a couple things have created it. First of all, every bit better that LeBron and Davis are makes it easier for the other guys to be good. Like it gives them more space to have either a bad game. It means they have that much more room, literally space to shoot. It gives them a little more flexibility. I think it gives them more confidence to know that these guys are doing what they're doing. And let's make no mistake. I mean, this thing is still being shouldered by those two guys, first and second and third most, throughout. But they still have to do it. And I think the way that Caruso has found a really good niche, I think the way that KCP has found a niche, I think the fact that Kuzma has been made kind of irrelevant offensively, and they are now 16-3 in the postseason. Is that right? No, I'm sorry, 13-3. You got to win 6. If you win 16, you're done.
16, you win the whole thing.
So they're 13-3 in the postseason, and Kuzma's been made irrelevant. And I think that's stunning to me, because before we all thought Kuzma was going to have to be pretty good for them to get through.
Yeah, I mean, I know I wrote a lot about that for The Athletic, just in terms of, this being such a significant thing for Kuzma. And, he really had been inconsistent a lot over the course of this season. And some of that I do think had to do with being injured to start the season and never really coming out of the gate on the same page as everybody else. But some of this was just he wasn't playing well. He wasn't doing the things that were expected of him. But I think he's done a really good job this season, and especially in these playoffs, just accepting the idea of whatever is needed of me is whatever is needed of me. And, whatever I used to think was needed of me, the way I used to define my value and my worth and my mission statement as a basketball player, that's going to have to change in order for me to find a role with this team this season. And Kuzma clearly cares about winning a championship. I actually asked him after, I don't remember if it was after the Lakers closed out Denver or after a recent practice, but, I asked him just about the idea of, you could have ended up a member of the Pelicans, or you could have potentially ended up a member of a different team, just because we saw how much had to happen in order for the Lakers to bring in Anthony Davis, which means by definition, everybody that wasn't LeBron was potentially on the table. The Lakers, by all accounts, worked to keep Kuzma, but some of that had to do with, look, he is a very inexpensive theoretical third option, and his theoretical skill set, we're not going to be able to replicate that with our cap situation. So, some of that was practicality. Some of that was them genuinely liking Kuzma. But either way, there's a very real chance he could have been somewhere else. And he's the only real survivor of last year's team. I mean, other than the guys that they brought back in terms of tradable assets. No, they literally moved everybody else. And he's very aware of how tenuous his current status with the Lakers is. And, and how on Earth 2, Kyle Kuzma could be on a different team.
Well, on Earth 1, he could, like you say, it's tenuous. He could be on a different team next year, because what we're talking about here is not great for his long-term prospects unless he's willing to play for less money. If he wants to get paid, this shows it's going to be somewhere else. He's not going to make the money he wants as a scorer here, because it's been made very clear they don't need him to be that guy, and there's no space for him to do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I remember years ago when we covered the 2009-2010 championships teams, I wrote a piece about Jordan Farmar during what turned out to be his last year with the Lakers, and it was heading into the Phoenix Suns series, because that was sort of a come full circle moment for him, because for people who remember, Jordan Farmar ended up starting that 2007 opening round against the Suns when Smush Parker ended up getting benched right at the end of the season.
Laker luminaries.
Yes, but Jordan Farmar ended up playing, he was starting in that series, and, frankly got eaten alive by Steve Nash, as a lot of players more experienced than him did. But I wrote a piece about Jordan, and I talked with him a lot about just his fit with the Lakers in the triangle. He was still a backup to that point. He was playing behind Fisher, and, it was not the way he saw his career. And what I thought was really interesting about it is, I always thought, and I wrote this in the piece, that Farmar thought he was a better player than he was, particularly at that time.
I think that's true.
But also, I think he had a legitimate claim that the way Phil wanted him to play didn't play to his strengths, and therefore was holding him back. And as much as I think Farmar inflated his own worth and, talent as a player, I also thought he was right.
Sure.
Like he was not a natural.
Well, I mean, look, and multiple things can be true at one time. And in the case of Kuz, he's a good scorer. I think he's a little overrated as a scorer, but he's a good scorer. I mean, he's shown that if you give it, I think it's hard for me to picture him being a really elite scorer or high end scorer on a good team, like a really good team with, 2 or 3 of those other guys on it. But, on a lesser team, he did it last year with the Lakers. On a lesser team, you go out and get a lot of shots, he's going to put the ball in the basket. I have a ton of respect for what he's done. I mean, we like to make the jokes, that the snitch line was for Kyle Kuzma, like that was the NBA established the snitch line specifically, like you call it the Kuzma line.
It didn't help that during the pandemic, he and his lady went to that part. They went to that record release party. Yes. And the theme of the party was everybody showing up in hazmat suits, which by definition means the theme of this party is none of y'all should be here.
Exactly. And
it's not safe for you to be here.
Kuz is very aware of sort of being Kuz and the Kuz brand and all that. And he can do that. And it's sort of sometimes, when he shows up to, on Christmas or whatever it was in the mesh shirt and all that, it projects a certain unseriousness that is not fair to him, because he is also a guy who tries really hard to be good and wants really to be good. And, came into camp this year setting a bar for himself that frankly he didn't clear. But most guys under promise and over deliver. He over promised and tried to meet the expectations. And that says something about him. And like, given what he has done here, like he's come in and he plays defense and he's trying hard and and he's better at it than he was before. And, maybe somewhere in the back of his mind is like, if I'm going to get a ring in this league, this might be my shot at it. So I'm going to go in there and do it, because either they're going to trade me or I'm going to sign somewhere else where I can get paid. And so I'm going to put it in now. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, the other thing too is if he's going to get paid at all off this season, or this season is going to convince another team that he's setting himself up to get paid, it's going to be by showing the other stuff that he can do. Because at this point, everybody knows he can provide what might be considered empty calorie scoring.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he's done it before. And we've also, to be fair to Kuzma, seen him on this team if he is in a position to be the second scorer, either alongside AD or alongside LeBron. So, maybe he could actually be on a good team that happens to just have more backcourt scoring.
Maybe.
And needs some kind of balance.
Maybe. And if he plays defense, that makes a difference. But, right, all that matters, and I always say this when we talk about Kuz, and when AD is out or when LeBron is out, he steps up and none of that matters. It's interesting and it's relevant to him, but it's irrelevant to the Lakers, and it's irrelevant in the context of this team, because all that matters with this team is how well do you play with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, because there's never going to be a situation where Kuz is like out there instead of those guys, or out there with the focus where he's the focus instead of those guys. So all that matters is how you play in the context of having those two dudes. And it's not that he's been terrible, but like his skill set doesn't, he's not a good enough shooter. You know, the shooting didn't come around. It really hasn't it got off to a really strong start in the bubble as a 3-point shooter, and it's faded since then. He's gone back to what he was before. He's not a great fit with those guys. They've found better ways to do it.
The flip side being, you know, Alex Caruso has shown he is a fantastic fit with both LeBron and AD. You know, I mean, Caruso is eventually, if he plays like this and keeps improving, he's going to end up getting himself into, you know, a better economic situation. He's going to put himself, you know, in the ability to make more money. But as long as AD is on this team, for as long as LeBron is on it, I guess as well too, but his career is obviously going to wrap up before Anthony Davis's, you're going to be thinking about Caruso as a guy that plays well,
more important,
with AD,
more valuable, but even the one, you know, and
KCP
actually he has turned into mana from heaven, Andy.
Right. I mean, well, as we've talked about before, KCP's salaries, as he's been, I guess, considered something of a Rich Paul clutch tax. The tax at least keeps getting lower. Like it keeps getting progressively lower.
It's become quite reasonable,
right? Like to the point where, you know, when KCP is eventually playing alongside Bronny on this team, like he's going to be a bargain. Like he's going to be making like $1.5 million
veterans minimum.
Right. But KCP has shown this season he plays very well alongside LeBron and alongside AD.
Yeah.
You know, what exactly that costs, I don't know.
No, but I just say, granted, LA points out on the chat, you know, Kuzma never used to pass. He sees the court now. It's all of this is true. Like, he really has worked on and improved, and I think you're right, made that conscious choice of, okay, I can't do the thing so I'm going to pass a little bit better. I'm going to look, you know, he's not Magic Johnson, but he's not supposed to be. But he makes better decisions passing the ball than he did before.
Terrific pass tonight, driving and then dishing to AD, cutting along the baseline.
Yeah,
it's a fantastic.
He's had a few of those moments, and so I give him a lot of credit as somebody who's been pretty critical of Kuzma over the course of the year. Again, I don't think unfairly or without cause. Just that he deserves credit for not sulking and not, you know, pouting that he can't do that stuff. So what happens, Andy, do you think, if Dragic is either limited, I mean, he's going to be limited, or can't play? I think the series is done. I don't think they can win without Dragic.
No. It's an interesting question because, you know, we're still waiting to find out what happens with Bam Adebayo. And
I saw some people in the chat were saying that they're reporting that he will play in game 2. But even then, is he going to be reporting? You know, is he going to be playing, but playing, you know, severely limited? I mean, he's really not going to be 100% for the rest of this series.
It all remains to be seen. But I feel like in some ways Bam's absence would be felt more, even if Dragic, who has really, really been playing well, you know, is obviously very important to Miami. I feel like without Bam, they have no players who matter, who can even sort of replicate and match up against the Lakers' size. And we saw how much trouble Miami was having with the Lakers' size in this game with Bam. Without Bam, I don't know where you go.
Yeah.
Because they're not built. They're not built to
Leonard.
play. Well, Miami is not built to play small as a strategy, like really that small. That's not going to be effective.
They play without centers, traditional centers, but yeah, they're not like micro ball.
Right. I mean, Miami's not, I don't picture Miami, you know, finding success going the Houston Rockets route. Like
the biggest problem is just those are their best players. I mean, we're not even talking about what style, this, that, the replacements are basically irrelevant. We're talking about a team that doesn't play a lot of guys deep into their bench anyway. And, you know, you take, maybe a little bit more depth. They're short at the top end compared to Davis and LeBron. Good as Bam and Dragic and and Jimmy Butler are, they're still not close, really, I think, to AD and LeBron as a star tandem. If Dragic is out or limited, if Bam is less than able to play at a at an elite, sort of elite for Bam level, whatever his top level is, and don't forget Jimmy Butler rolled an ankle. I think Jimmy Butler seems to me to be the kind of guy, like, if the ankle literally had fallen off, he'd still figure out how to kind of just saunter off the court, like swag style. Like, he doesn't show pain. But if two of those three guys are genuinely limited and or out, they have no chance to win this series because they don't have enough good players.
No,
it doesn't matter whoever. They don't have enough good players left. And F you 2020 for taking away our NBA Finals.
Yeah, I really hope that's not the case. I mean, the Lakers don't want to beat a watered down version of the Heat. I mean, they've been through so much getting to this point. That they want to feel every single bit of satisfaction,
especially since people are already going to give them shit for not having to play the Clippers and the Bucks,
right? As if that's their fault,
right?
But you're correct. Like, they're going to want to feel like they took out the best competition possible, especially after they've been in this bubble since fucking mid-July. Like, it is easy to forget that we are almost in October. They entered this thing in mid-July. So the idea that Anthony Davis said afterwards that, you never want to see guys get hurt. You want to beat the best version of teams. And I know that can be cliched in some ways, just in the sense that it's unquestionably an opportunity for a team if the opposing team loses somebody important. That being said, I genuinely believe they want to beat the best version of this Miami team.
Absolutely. I really do. For two reasons. First of all, like, they're better. Like, I know, like, they were not a universal pick to win the title. I get that, but they were, Vegas has them at very, very strong odds. Most basketball people pick the Lakers to win this series, and so I think they're aware of, like you said, that factor of, they backed into it, whatever it might be. And so if you already think that you're better than the other team, you want, and you think you can and should win, you want to have that fully intact deal there, so you don't have to listen to that shit when you're done with it. But then these guys are competitive, and they don't want to feel like they got some sort of watered down thing. They'll take the ring, don't get me wrong, but they don't want to feel like they backed into it or lucked into it or didn't have to face something, or that the other guys had to do to get their title. Nobody wants that.
No. I mean, these guys work really, really hard to get to this point. They are super, super competitive, and they take pride in who they take out. Like, this is something that matters to them. And, LeBron, for example, has been on the other side of this. In 2015, when he had to compete against the Warriors without Kyrie Irving, without Kevin Love, on a team that would have been considered the underdogs anyway.
Right.
One side of this, you could say, is, turnabout is fair play. This is the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, and this is part of sports. But LeBron knows how that feels on the other side. Just knowing how it's going to eat at you as a team, thinking about the what if. It's a bad feeling for everybody involved. And I'm not saying he's going to take mercy on the Heat if that's the way
you go
it
out
is.
And you win this in 4 or 5 if instead of 6 or 7.
But I think all of these guys have experienced enough of this to know, especially if you're confident in your team, and there's no reason for the Lakers not to be confident, because I think they're the better team anyway. They want to take on the best version of Miami. And we want to watch the best version of Miami because that gives us the best playoffs, gives us the best finals. You've cut out, or your volume still on? I don't hear you.
How about now?
Now I hear you.
There we go. Would the Clippers have beaten the Lakers in the last round? I don't know. They didn't beat Denver. Like, I mean, the way that Trez was playing and the way that Lou Williams was playing, I think the Lakers would have made them irrelevant in this series, and taken a lot of that depth and a lot of the stuff that made you think the Clippers had a good chance, and made those guys kind of unplayable. I think the way the Lakers were doing it would have been, so it's really hard to judge. The Clippers never became the Clippers that they were supposed to be. Would Milwaukee have given the Lakers a better series? Well, if Adebayo and Dragic are hurt or can't play at 100, okay, fine. But they got dusted by Miami. So it's like, how do you necessarily say that these aren't the best teams and they haven't played the best, whatever? Denver was the best team that was left. They outplayed a Clippers team that disappointed. It doesn't mean that Denver wasn't good. Miami has been steamrolling people in the playoffs. They beat a really good Celtics team. So, I don't know exactly what the criticism is or the counterfactual is, but at the very least, I do know that if the Lakers beat a Heat team that doesn't have Dragic and Bam misses a game or is playing with one arm, there will be people out there who try to diminish the accomplishment.
Yeah, and it really sucks because, the Lakers, and for that matter, the Heat, have been through a lot to get to this point. I would feel bad for Miami along those lines, just for everything, you've been through. I know Jimmy Butler has really enjoyed the bubble, and he's, born a coffee empire out of it. And he seems to be the one person on the planet who just loves being there more than like life before the pandemic. Like this seems to be in some ways the greatest thing that ever happened to Jimmy Butler. But, for most of these guys, this has been a slog of sorts,
yes.
Groundhog Day. So I would like to see everybody feel some sense of satisfaction.
To go through all of this and then not be able to play in the finals. Like, you work that hard to get the finals and then you can't do it. I mean, that just sucks. Good question from Sector Cruz. Will JaVale play in this series? Seems like his skill set won't be helpful against the Heat. By now, everybody knows Dwight Howard started the game. Andy, you asked Frank Vogel afterwards why. It was interesting. It was less about Dwight and starting and this as it was, I think we can only play one center based on what they do with their reserves. And Dwight played really well against Denver. So that's what we did. It was an interesting answer to the question that it had less to do with the starting lineup for the Lakers than it did the reserve lineup for the Heat and kind of making that matchup ahead of time.
Well, you and I actually talked about this on the last Land of Lakers podcast. Just how will Frank Vogel look to take on this team that is smaller than them? And we saw them go much smaller than they typically do against Houston, and then go back to size as much as they possibly could against Denver.
Yes.
And, what I call the Lakers playing medium ball in some ways feels like the most natural solution against Miami because, like we talked about before, other than Bam, they don't have any size that matters at all on Miami. And, Markieff has played very well. You're going to want to keep him in the rotation. Obviously, Anthony Davis isn't going anywhere. So just the degree to which they would use Dwight and or JaVale at all, it was an interesting question. I know you had thought that they were going to start with JaVale just to keep things.
Well, yeah, and as sort of the baseline, he actually said in the answer, that's sort of how we've done it. They were a little concerned about falling behind against a Miami team that started series very well. But really, it just basically came down, we can only play one of the guys. Some of that was based on the assumption that both would play a little bit. Who do you start? And I think to some degree, the starting question is it's a little bit irrelevant in that way because you're just kind of matching up. But if they already knew how they were going to match up with Morris and AD, that kind of Morris-Kuzma combination with AD at the 5, then you can start whoever you want. If the rest of it sort of been figured out already.
It's interesting, though, because I agree and I don't agree in the sense that Frank's answer, without just coming out and saying it, made it clear that he thought Dwight played much better against Denver.
No question.
Rolling the player that was better, more recently better. And, that's something that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to discount that. And also, too, against a physical guy like Adebayo, Dwight as a larger body. But like you saw in that first quarter, Miami exploited Dwight in space.
You and I were
early.
You and I were texting back and forth. You actually said something interesting about the nature of this blowout and, the Lakers being in such control of this game going into the third quarter, and then, Dragic not playing. It made it so they couldn't really test whether or not Dwight was truly playable in this series, because the thing was so out of hand by the second half.
Actually, I said the opposite. The lead, if that game is a 2-point game at halftime, it's a 1-point game at halftime, or whatever it is, instead of a 17-point game. I wonder if Frank would have come back with, and Frank and I are on a first name basis now. I wonder if he would have come back with Dwight to start the second half, because it went so badly the first time. The Lakers got torched in the minutes that he played in the first quarter. It at least gave them an opportunity. I don't know how much you learn from it, but the start of the third quarter, it's still a basketball game.
Right, but it's a start of a third quarter without Goran Dragic being able to do that pick and roll. That was
right. You're right. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but at least you can go out and try again and see, oh yeah, shit, this isn't going to work. Or, oh, you know what? If we fix A, B, and C, we can do it again. He only played 15 minutes tonight, and I think generally speaking, you're not going to see a lot of centers in this series, that much going forward. But what we saw tonight that will be pretty clear, and tell me if you disagree, is that you will only see one of however many minutes centers get. It'll only be one of them.
Well, yeah, because ultimately the most important center on this team is Anthony Davis.
Correct.
So I agree. I mean, it's always going to be something interesting, like in the sense of if you ever have to go back to JaVale for some reason, how he reacts to it, that sort of thing. But I don't blame Frank for, if he's going to pick between one of the two, picking Dwight. Dwight's been better. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's see here. I hate this question, but it's an interesting one. When LeBron wins the title, and it's looking like it's coming, does this solidify him as the greatest player ever? What do you think, if anything, changed? Because I do feel like, I know you hate this question, like you hate it. I do feel like there's at least a little bit of a shift in how people are talking about LeBron as the greatest ever. Like, I do feel like, again, not necessarily better than Jordan, but like I think this year and these playoffs have reminded people, kind of given a renewed appreciation for what he's doing, and shifted the conversation around him. This is going to sound really weird and stupid, but like where you can call him the best ever and just sort of pretend Michael Jordan isn't a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, people want to call him the best ever, but they don't want to have the Jordan argument. Well, I think some of this just comes down to, are you really counting the rings first and foremost? Because if you're counting the rings first and foremost, he's not going to beat Jordan, I think, for most people. He just isn't. Because
even if he catches him with the 6th ring, he still has losses, and Jordan never did.
Yeah, exactly. For people who count the rings, and blank an O in the finals is the most important thing, and also just the Michael Jordan aura. Michael Jordan still, his presence still lords over the NBA and lords over sports, even as a retired player. And it ain't because he's the owner of the Hornets.
You know who the two, I read this the other day, the two most popular players among, I want to say Gen Z, and I forget which gen down like 2 or 3 from us they pulled, but do you know who the two most popular players were?
Well, obviously one of them's Michael Jordan.
Correct.
The other one I'm going to say is LeBron.
Kobe Bryant.
Huh.
So
wow.
That's
that's really interesting, because a lot of that generation didn't see the best version of Kobe. Like, that's really interesting, actually. Like, depending on what the cutoff and what defines Gen Z, Kobe, the last 4 years of his career, he was not playing a lot and was certainly not Kobe, like, the Kobe of legend. You go back several years before you really see peak Kobe, or just Kobe when he really was Kobe.
And some of this could be influenced by, obviously events, but
absolutely.
To me, what the reason I mention is just because it reminds you that in some ways, like, MJ exists at this point as almost as much as a concept as he does a basketball player. Like, again, I go back, the most stunning thing that I took out of The Last Dance was remembering that Michael Jordan played college ball in an era without a 3-point line. Like, that's how long ago Michael Jordan was in college. And I don't think of him as that era. Michael Jordan was teammates in college with James Worthy, who I think of as a player from a different era and generation than Jordan. They played on the same fucking college team, for God's sakes. So it's like Jordan has reached that point where he's not a player, he's an idea, and he's a symbol, and he's all the stuff in The Last Dance did nothing to kind of dispel that. But whereas LeBron is still out there and doing it and kind of reminding people what he was. And in 30 years, when people are going to look back and go, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot that LeBron was playing. Like, LeBron's going to be a concept. Time does weird things to these arguments.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking about it, actually. I mean, I've talked about this a lot before, that part of the reason that I can't stand the compare MJ to pick player X is it's a rigged parlor game.
Right.
Like, it's like when you go to a carnival and you're throwing the fish, the ping pong ball inside the little fish bowl, and it's rigged so you can't win this thing. Usually these Michael Jordan
debates, fish that they give you is going to die in like 3 days anyway.
Exactly. I mean,
nobody comes out ahead,
right?
Especially the fish.
You're dropping $20 to $30 to try to win a goldfish that's going to die before you even get home.
Right. Just go to a place like sells fish,
or go to. I was going to say go to a shelter. Go to a goldfish shelter, like a no-kill goldfish shelter. Get your goldfish not from a breeder,
right?
You go to a no-kill shelter.
What kind of fish? I don't know. It's just some sort of mutt. We picked it up at the pound.
But all of these, whether it was MJ Kobe or MJ Penny Hardaway, MJ Iverson, MJ LeBron, down the line, these have all existed basically to set up some poor schmo as not Michael Jordan.
Correct.
Because that always was the end game. He ain't Jordan. So after a while, it's like, well, then why are we playing this game? Like, if we're just going to say that nobody can ever pass Jordan, let's stop playing this game, or at least let's start thinking about the game differently. And if you start thinking about the game differently, the uniqueness of LeBron as a player and his career, and what he's done, going to 9 finals in 10 years, even if he hasn't won them all, and to be able to play at a level at his age with this type of mileage, that is something Jordan not only never did, he never came close to doing. And that should at least matter a lot. Like, it's part of what I think leaves Kareem getting the short end of this stick. Like, the longevity of Kareem's career as a really significant player, I think, gets slept on a lot. Like a game-changing, game-influencing player. And, Michael Jordan's influence was about more than just the game, obviously, and that's part of what has made him just the consensus GOAT for so long. That, and he was really damn good. Like, there's no reason not to say Michael Jordan. But I do think we have to, at least, if LeBron ends up getting his 4th championship, 10th trip to the finals, did it with 3 different teams, you have to at least start thinking about just the overall span and the significance of all that, and what, like, just really what that all means.
And it puts in, I don't put this up, and Johnny Berry notes, why do we only count the 6-0 finals record and not include all the times MJ lost in the playoffs? And like, I don't put that up there to, again, like, kind of fuel the who's better thing, but it is it's a great reminder from Johnny that we penalize getting to the end and losing more than we penalize people for not getting there at all. LeBron, who is, and I always get this wrong, he's 3-5 in the finals, correct?
Well, he is 3-6, but in my mind, he should be 3-5 because I don't count 2007.
No, that doesn't count.
No, the only reason that he has that loss in 2007 against the Spurs that they got swept is because LeBron was good enough to carry that team. That team would have never come close to it.
It is a weird thing that LeBron James would be better off, like in this whole argument, had he just lost in the first round a couple times instead of getting to the finals.
Yeah.
Like imagine how we would think of LeBron if he had lost in the first round in 2011. He'd have gotten hammered then, but then he wouldn't have lost to Dirk in the worst performance, the one that always gets attached to him, because now he's got that 2017 or whatever it is that he dragged. Like that team was terrible and no business in the finals. He, single-handedly kept broken Cleveland teams in against the Warriors and actually managed to beat them the one time as well. So it's like, if you had been fortunate enough to lose in the second round or the Eastern Conference Finals instead of actually wetting the bed or whatever against Dallas, the whole thing gets better. But why doesn't he get credit? It's a weird thing we do in sports.
We do. I used to write about this and say this all the time. For a lot of people, basketball media, a lot of basketball fans, Kobe had to win his fourth championship to win his first. In the way that everybody needed to see him do this without Shaq. And on one hand, I understand it to a point because this was something that was actually important to Kobe. Kobe was candid about wanting to show that he could do this as the unquestioned focal point of a team, the unquestioned leader, unquestioned number one option. And I get all that, and I think it was admirable. But that idea of him having to win his fourth to win his first in some ways reduces him to a passenger alongside Shaq between 2000 and 2002. And that's just ridiculous. Like, the idea of could Shaq have won championships without Kobe? If you'd put in like a different two guard, if you put in Iverson, if you put in T-Mac, if you put in Vince Carter, Paul Pierce, pick the best two guards of that era. Do I think he could have won one? Absolutely. Those players I all named were really good. Ray Allen, whoever. Do I think he could have won one? Yeah. Two, maybe. Three straight? Absolutely not.
No.
It needed to be Kobe specifically because nobody else was as good as him. Like, period. I don't think it's that complicated a concept.
Yeah. It's hot take sports radio-y type stuff, but I didn't see Jordan in any meaningful way. I saw him play with the Wizards. Live. Obviously, I watched.
Low key, those were his best years,
as far as I know. But like, as in this world and in doing what I do, like I never saw him play with the Chicago Bulls live. Saw him play with the Wizards. Wasn't the same experience. I watched Kobe. Now I've seen LeBron up close and watched him play. And is Jordan better? Maybe. But like, was Kareem better? Okay. All I know is LeBron is unbelievable, and to have the chance to sit here and watch and appreciate and be around people now in an era where people are better at explaining basketball now than they were 25 or 30 years ago. There's all the mechanisms of video and Mo Dakhil and Pete Zayas and all these people who are putting out these great little bits on Twitter during games and helping people understand. Like, I get to do that with LeBron at a time where people can even help me, who follows the game, understand why LeBron is so much better than it's just fun. Like, the worst part about these arguments is they suck the fun out of great players. It doesn't matter if a guy is the third best or the seventh best on a planet with like 1 billion or 7 billion people or whatever it is. Being third is really good.
I have said before, I've said before many times, as great as Michael Jordan was, and I used to love watching MJ play, in some ways, Michael Jordan ruined sports because Michael Jordan created this entire narrative and prism through which we now evaluate and discuss everything in sports. And honestly, that prism kind of sucks.
It does.
It really sucks.
All right, before we go, let's you said Lakers in 7. I said Lakers in 6. I don't think anything that happened tonight will get us to switch teams.
No, I'm pretty good about the Lakers.
It's really hard even to say like what happens next until people are saying Bam's going to play. No, I mean maybe Dragic tries, maybe he doesn't, maybe he can, maybe he can't. If those guys, I'll just say, if those guys are diminished, then the Lakers are going to win this in 4 or 5. Miami is not going to win if those guys aren't capable of playing. It's just it sucks because this would have been a fun series.
I hate to say that. I hate to say that, but you're not wrong.
If you missed it, I'll throw the banner up there one more time. Lando Lakers live/late night happy hour crossover episode starring exactly the same people that you see in both shows and literally nobody else. That was tonight, but tomorrow Mo DeKeel will talk a lot about this. Hopefully have a little bit more information about what's going on with some of those Miami players. Friday, we'll be back with some Game 2 analysis, and then Vinny Bonsignor, who covers the Raiders for the Las Vegas Courier newspaper journal thing out there.
I'm laughing, but I know that
he worked for a newspaper.
He also knows the Rams really well. He covered the Rams.
So we'll get ready for NFL Week 4 with Vinny on Friday, and then Monday is
Josiah Johnson.
So this is just a good string of stuff. I don't even know how much longer the basketball season is going to last. We got some good guests coming up. One more reminder, go to Delicious Pizza, 20% off, and you use Cam Brothers as a code there. 2 locations, West Adams and in Hollywood on Sunset. Great pizza. Big Lakers fans, support your local businesses. We will see everybody tomorrow night at 10.
Danke, Nederland.